FURF is the sophomore EP of English furry musician Pent Up Pup. The first time I listened to it, I had a week-long mental breakdown. It's the best album of 2025. Can I be yours? I've always been drawn to art that people consider lowbrow or ridiculous or just bad. And some people feel that way about FURF, although even they tend to agree the production's pretty fire. To be honest, it's the kind of response you'd expect to an EP which on first listen I described as like if the horniest furry ever tried to make an Ed Sheeran album. Having said that, FURF really resonated with a lot of people too, including me. And when I like something, I analyze it, so that's what we're doing for the next 30 minutes. Strap in. I want to find out what makes it so compelling. I want to understand what it has to say. Spoiler, it's not just furry porn. People have wondered if art can be furry without the obvious visual signifiers. A lot of academics don't even acknowledge furry music, even though furries say it's important for their fandom involvement. Pup themselves has talked about this in interviews. Can music be furry even when the artist has actively disavowed the fandom? Using FURF as an example, I'm going to suggest a multimedia furry genre that could be used to argue for the furriness of all kinds of art, even with no mention of anthro-animals or links to the fandom. It's not like a list of criteria and you need all of them to count as furry. It's just some features I see in a lot of furry art that can start to build a picture of what generally unites furries. First, I'll go through the narrative content of the EP and see what it's about. If you somehow found this video without having heard FURF, I'm shocked and you should go listen to it right now. There's a link in the description. Actually, if you've already heard it, listen again, it's really good. In summary, FURF is about a series of fantasies shared by the narrator, Pent Up Pup, and their real-life owner, furry illustrator and animator Bunny Mutt. As the record goes on, the fantasies become more and more abstract and escapist until, in track 6, they euphorically crash into reality as Pup and Bunny Mutt meet for the first time at Anthrocon 2024. Cuddly is sweet, simple, safe-saying and consensual and grounded in reality. The instrumental is laid back and the characters are literally falling asleep. It couldn't be more relaxed. It's really focused on the sensation of intimacy and the sensation of being a furry. Feel your digits on me now. You bite on my neck. These describe very specific points of contact between two anthropomorphic bodies. In Past That Pool Toy, on the other paw, Pup is starting to become a little more active and excitable. They're still drifting in and out, but especially in the second verse, they receive a lot of stimulation at once, so intense that their head is gonna melt. The bodies depicted, sentient pool toys, are a step towards the fantastical, but their properties are analogous to features of real bodies. Bite me, but not too hard. Pup has intense desires, but they have limits and boundaries which they are willing to articulate. Erotica often does away with boundaries to focus on the fantasy, but their inclusion here brings the story down to earth. Pups and their ambiguous, knowledge genitals also signify their body as queer in particular. Since Cuddly, the music has remained highly sensory. In particular, Pool Toy focuses on the very alien experience of being a pool toy. It takes advantage of the auditory medium to include sound effects that will be heard at the scene, rather than relying exclusively on text descriptions. The listener is asked to identify with Pup. They literally experience the same auditory sensations as them, and the other sensations are easy to imagine. I always smile when I hear the lyric, well, if I do, you could blow me inflated, and if you I could blow you conflate man. It's a very smart internal rhyme. The whole song is almost certainly a reference to the erotic comic Past the Pool Toy, released by Brayburned in 2023. The tone and content are both very similar, focused on the sensation of being a pool toy. Reading the comic, we see the song illustrated. Make sure that I don't go carry me, I'm weightless, squeeze me and squish me, covering my maw, you see the seal and you take it. Okay, that's all I can show you, get it. However, lyrics like I'm in love and here for you add a romantic context which the comic lacks, but which is a through line in much of FURF. In Not Song, the language choice is suddenly much more vulgar. Pup's sleepiness has lifted and been replaced with desperate horniness. It's also much less romantic than the previous songs.
Coming in me, what's your first impression?
Evokes casual intimacy rather than romantic commitment. This is queer. Here, penetration is far from the ultimate form of intimacy. Instead, it's playful and fun, with chiptune instrumentals and laughing vocals.
I felt your knot and my body took a screenshot.
Is a bizarre and silly metaphor. Die Young by Kesha, which is interpolated in the chorus, is not a serious song either. It talks about death, which is serious, as a reason to party and have fun. Not Song continues an existing tradition of Die Young in furry art. For example, Die Young the AMV by Vivzy Pop, and Here for a Good Time Not a Long Time by Russellberg. Pitts feels tense and frustrated. It's a big shift in musical style and also not traditionally romantic. Pup has said that this song was written with live shows in mind, and yeah, it was pretty good. It's all very visceral and sensory. Grabbing someone by the maw stands out as particularly aggressive. The narrator is still in a trance, but it's an intense fixation that drives them to action, not relaxation. Changed is even more tense. For most of the song, the production is more restrained than Pitts, but the fantasy presented is more frightening and less consensual than the others. At this point, the narrator is deep in fantasy and desperate escapism, and their frustration culminates in the song's ending. In contrast with the other tracks, it also feels kind of lonely. No attention is paid to the way the goo creature feels. There are two voices, but only one body. This absence is deeply felt in a record so focused on physical sensation. I think Pup's vocal delivery is important for moving the song from horror to erotica. Listen to this.
There's a lock there, tell me what that means.
I find it hard to believe that the narrator really doesn't know what the lock means. In fact, they sound sheepishly excited by it. This is Pup's fantasy. It doesn't feel unsafe. After all, the goo is just them with the voice changer. The song title is a reference to a 2018 game of the same name, and like Pool Toy, it borrows narrative content from its namesake. Change 2018 is interesting because it's framed like a horror game, but clearly for the most part it's not actually meant to be scary. It's so difficult that you will fail, but if we're being honest, when the fail state is turning into a fluffy animal, is that such a bad thing? Also, the repetition of Lock It is probably a reference to Unlock It in parentheses Lock It by Charlie XCX featuring Kim Petras and Jay Park. Unlock It is about feeling liberated by normal cishet intimacy. It's focused on lock and key as a penetrative innuendo. On the other paw, Changed is about being trapped by queer intimacy, but being trapped is part of the fun. In Changed, being locked and unlocked is about the denial of traditional phallic pleasure. The meaning of the original song is transformed in a furry context. FURF G, which I will also refer to as track 6 to avoid confusion with the EP as a whole, is real, or at least it's framed as real. We go from the most fantastical song to a historical account. The vocal delivery is conversational. They laugh, they hesitate. The song contains ostensibly real audio of Pup and Bunnybutt having sex. Track 6 is, for the first time, aware of a world outside Pup and Bunnymutt's relationship, with other characters and locations, a whole convention. All of this is contrasted against the stark unreality of Changed. Bunnymutt and Pup have been pulled from their fantasy into a real world that is just as beautiful. FURF G features Bunnymutt's voice and is described on Bandcamp as a love song for her. When it references the other songs on the record, it links them through to Bunnymutt, which is why I feel justified in claiming that this whole EP is about their relationship specifically. However, when other people are included in their play, and when Pup sings I Love It Here, their love for each other is connected to all of Anthrocon and the whole furry community. To me, the line,
"But you should definitely fuck yourself,"
has three meanings. First, and most obviously, it's directed at Bunnymutt. They are going to fuck. The album cover has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pups on it. Each one matches a track on the EP. The one that corresponds to track 6 is looking into the camera, addressing the audience, inviting them into the self-cessed orgy. For this reason, I think You Should Definitely Fuck Yourself is also addressing the audience. The second meaning is received by the audience that doesn't get it. Puff is telling them directly to go fuck themselves. The music was not created for them and they're not supposed to enjoy it. Conversely, the third meaning addresses the EP's intended audience. We are all invited to fuck ourselves. That is to say, to love how furfags love, to feel what they felt for ourselves by embracing furry love and community connection. At the end, Puff interpolates the refrain of another song, Locals by Underscores and Gabby Start. In Locals, the words are
arms, body, legs, flesh, skin, bone, sinew, good luck.
But in Furfag, they are The original lyric reduces humans to their most fundamental and physical parts. In the same way, track 6 does away with artifice and gives the rawest picture of Pup's identity and reality. Their animal identity is more true than their human one. The fantasy is more real than reality. Sit, beg, good pup is relational. A puppy doesn't instruct themselves to perform tricks. To Pup, their animal identity is essentially both sensory and social. They identify with the physical traits of a dog and with the way a dog relates to other people. That's the complete story of Furfag in isolation, but by considering its place in the furry fandom as a whole, we can draw interesting connections and learn more about what it means to be a furry.
With the puppy dog paws.
What are furries? This question has been answered ad nauseum by a lot of different people, and there will never be a clear answer. There is, however, definitely some level of distinction between furry the fandom and furry the genre, or between furries the people and furries the characters in the art they produce. And I do consider it a genre. It's a set of cultural and aesthetic conventions that are useful to talk about as a single unit. The furry fandom are fans of the furry genre. This is probably the simplest way to justify calling them a fandom. They have a lot in common with fans of any other genre, sci-fi or horror for example. They seek out art that bears furry aesthetics, and they very prolifically make furry art of their own. Furries are especially keen on finding furry aesthetics where the author never intended them. This is how the fandom came to exist in the first place. They take all kinds of media and reanalyze it through a furry lens. Furfag is a fan work in many ways. It's aware and proud of its cultural ancestors. To recap, here are some of the things it's a fan of and that it transforms into a new furry context. Change 2018, Pass the Pool Toy by Brayburn, All the Single Furries by Easy Wolf, Antler Crimes by Bit Depth, and How to Be Soft by Jufwoof are made by other furries. Lock It by Charlie XCX and Locals by Underscores are not made by furries, but they are reinterpreted in the context of Furfag. The former's meaning is changed by context, and the words of the latter are changed directly. Furfag references Die Young by Kesha, who is not a furry, possibly by way of other works which are furry. What about the furry genre? What are some of the conventions that make it up? Well, the obvious one is the anthropomorphic animals. Furfag is full of these. There's 6 on the cover. Cuddly has paws, Pool Toy has paws, Not Song has knots. You get the point. Every character in Furfag, at least in tracks 1 to 5, is anthropomorphic, including the narrator. This speaks to a special quality of furries' attitude towards anthro-animals. They identify with them. Using art, they occupy anthro bodies online and in real life. Anthropomorphic characters in other media have historically either been monsters to be feared or sex objects to be gawked at from a distance. Furries see themselves in the monstrous hybridity of the anthropomorphic. They don't fear it, they draw it closer. So that's a lot of words for the surface level meaning of furry and fandom, but there are other themes that commonly appear in furry art which further specify the genre. For example, furry art is typically cute, subjectively of course, but also in a general stylistic way. Big eyes, soft textures, round shapes, and so on. Cuddly is straightforwardly cute. Few things are cuter than a cuddly puppy. I would argue that there's cuteness in the other tracks too, in the lyrics and otherwise, depending on the breadth of your definition of cute. In Pool Toy, Pup is shy. In Not Song, they're whimpering. There's even an endearing simplicity to the loud, desperate sexuality of Pitts. The calm, simple musical style of the record's first half is cute in its own way. Ngai suggests that cuteness is predicated on a violent power dynamic. Cuteness represents the desire not just to lovingly molest, but also to aggressively protect. Furry's relationship with cuteness is an unusual one. By identifying with cute animals, they situate themselves on both sides of this dynamic. Furry art is often erotic. Furries have a reputation for being obsessed with sex, and that's definitely not true 100% of the time, but it's unclear if there's any truth at all in the stereotype. Furries actually report a low level of focus on sexuality. However, these figures aren't necessarily meaningful. They could be selling their sexual interest short because they object to the stereotype. Still, erotica and pornography are major furry cultural exports, and you don't need me to tell you furfag falls into that category. The intersection of cuteness and erotica can confuse non-furries, who don't expect the two to be mixed. Furries are playful. Engaging with each other and the world as their fursonas is a kind of roleplay that is crucial to the fandom. The way furries transform and blend the media they enjoy is also playful. When Pup interpolates Die Young in Not Song, there's a sense of mischief in their voice. It's the same as an illustrator playfully rebelling against the creators of a movie they like by drawing porn of the characters. In this sense, fandom is playful in general. In Cuddly, Pup sings out loud.
It's a fun time to be your pet tonight.
The alternation between requests
If you're calling me up,
and actions
I'm on my fours now.
is like a back and forth game between the characters, daring each other to be more and more intimate. In her video essay Are Furries God, Patricia Taxon talks about how she uses furry imagery to disarm herself and invite the audience into a deeper relationship with her art. She shows that her art is earnest to persuade her audience to engage with it earnestly. Part of that crucial vulnerability comes from the possibility of being cringed at. I believe cringe is also a core furry aesthetic. When people resonate with Pup's work, they often value the same shamelessness, sincerity, and earnestness that makes people cringe. Furfag uses cringe aesthetics for two purposes: to show earnestness and invite a sincere audience, and to protect its community. Pup weaponizes cringe to make their music intolerable to people who would threaten the community surrounding it, in person and online. Furries, the real-life people, are overwhelmingly queer, and this is reflected in their art perhaps nowhere more explicitly than in FURFag. In some ways, blending the human and the animal is inherently queer. Parallels can be drawn with the way trans people blend traditional gender categories. Queer furries and Therians often use their animal identity to explore their gender. For some, the animal identity can feel more real than the gender identity. My conviction that I'm a furry is stronger than my conviction that I'm a woman. Furries are also mostly men, although as of 2022 the majority was only 65%. In 2019, a study even suggested that 10% of cis women in the fandom have fursonas that don't align with their real-life gender, 4 times more likely than cis men. Pup's work is, like much furry art, somewhat phallocentric. When pleasure is given or denied, it is usually given by, given to, or denied from the penis. But the only time in Pup's entire discography anyone is textually gendered is in a direct quote in FURFag Come Pizza. This separation of sex and gender is a queer, specifically trans decision, and even specifically trans-feminine given the type of genitals in question. In track 6, the characters include a vibrator in their play, a typically female and feminine sexual expression. This is juxtaposed with being fucked and knotted, both of which, to the cisgender parasex observer, invoke an active male participant and a passive second participant. The vibrator is a means to pleasure entirely separate from the penis, the antithesis of phallocentricity. FURFag the song holds within itself the nuanced and blended realities of sex, gender, and sexuality. In fact, in Nut Song, the penis is totally secondary to the knot. The animal feature outweighs the sexed body. This speaks to furry as a tool for looking beyond sex and gender into a more personal model of identity. The furry fandom shares many of these qualities with the kink community. It makes sense that FURFag feels like it belongs in both. It references chastity play, collaring, jockstraps, chastity play again, semi-public sex. All of these are well understood kink practices that predate the furry fandom.
PC 2024 in your hotel.
It's worth mentioning some other music Pup made that feels like it belongs with FURFag. I'm sorry if I missed anything because I only found Pup like a week after FURFag released, so I wasn't there from the beginning. Firstly, in 2024, they released AZ 2024 acoustic demo. It's really cute, it's like a mini FURFag. It feels like they got home from Anthrocon, sat down at their computer with a guitar and recorded it straight away. By the way, it's worth noting that the first demo for Cuddly was actually posted in 2023. 2 months after FurFag, Bunny Mutt released June Couldn't Come Sooner on her YouTube channel, with Pup's music set to her animation. It's also very cute. It's about looking forward to seeing each other again at AC 2025. It's like an echo of FurFag. The anticipation feels different now they've done it already. More peaceful and more mutual than FurFag. In a way, all of FurFag is a collaboration between Pup and Bunny Mutt. It couldn't have existed without their relationship, not to mention the recordings of Bunny Mutt's actual voice. 1 week before the release of FurFag, after a long countdown on their website, Pup held a livestream to announce the EP. I'm very sad I missed it, and I was so excited when Bunny Mutt posted the VOD on Twitter. Not excited about the cum necessarily, I'm in this for the art. In that livestream, they presented an audio-visual performance art piece called FurFag Cum Pizza, in which they, in their own words, cut up a pizza to spell FurFag and came on it. The absurd title and visuals could not have prepared anyone for the heartbreaking 9-minute song that they accompanied. FurFag Cum Pizza, the song, is composed of 4 movements. An instrumental section that samples All the Single Furries and Die Young, a cover of Antler Crimes by Bit Depth, a reading of How to Be Soft, a poem by Jufwoof from Union magazine, and original lyrics followed by the eponymous Coming. This song is Pup directly stating what FurFag is about. The artifice and fantasy are gone. It's the perfect complement to the EP. FurFag the album has serious framing, a proper release cycle with pre-releases, live shows and a high-quality painted album cover, and light-hearted contents. FurFag Cum Pizza has light-hearted framing, the album cover is painted in a different sense of the word, and serious contents. The covers and vocal chops make this a fan work. The visuals and title are a reference to a furry in-joke. This is by and for the furry fandom in particular. It draws on imagery from both furry and traditional pet play. In the second movement, the singer's desire to be as small as possible is contrasted with their envy of people who move so confidently. Over the course of the lyrics, they are drawn out of their self-effacing escapist fantasy by the love of an owner figure. This is the same as the story of FurFag. The third movement goes beyond that original story. I have been someone's dog because they needed me to be, calls our attention to the owner's feelings and the mutual value of pet play. And it may not make sense. This is the essence of a pet-owner relationship. It feels good to love and be loved, even though neither party truly understands the other or the nature of their relationship. In the fourth movement, I cry a lot.
Do all the dogs go to heaven?
I really have a soft spot for religious stuff. Pup poses a question. Is it enough to want to be good to you? And the answer is FurFag.
This is fucking funny and fucking hot.
In FurFag, puppy play is more than an escapist fantasy. It is a functional means of interfacing with the world. In several of the songs, the puppy character is barely even submissive, when the traditional fantasy of being a pup is total absolution from decision-making and responsibility. They are given agency. Their relationship is allowed to exist in real life and in fantasy, and the two complement each other. In track 6, Pup and Bunny Mutt's relationship is placed within a community, the furry fandom. Pup functions as a dog in society around other people. They have pretty much socially transitioned into a dog. The very existence of FurFag, which is beautiful and has had a deep impact on many people, is a further testament to the puppy's significance in the world. In these ways, FurFag illustrates that it is enough to want to be good to you. A pet's feelings have meaning in the real world through community, whether they have agency or not. This is in contrast to traditional views of pet play. Early pet play came from military leather culture, which was extremely hierarchical and humiliation-focused. This is still reflected in online puppy boy and puppy girl culture, which distinguishes itself from furry by its focus on escapism rather than identity exploration. Traditional puppy players want to escape their lives and be dogs instead. Furries want to reanalyze their lives through an anthropomorphic lens, mixing fiction and reality. In the end, FurFag hurtles towards reality instead of running away from it. I don't mean to discredit either perspective, of course. Escapism has its place and furries love it too. These views meet in another furry song from 2025, Puppy Forever by Passenger Princess.
I just wanna be a puppy
This is reductive. They want to be distanced from real life and community, but the furry perspective shines through.
I hope I make you feel like a little puppy dog too.
It's mutual. Furries are on both sides of the dynamic. This blurring of dichotomies, like human versus animal, owner versus pet, is essentially furry and crucial to the genre. Furry breaks down many traditional dichotomies, especially between the active and the passive, recognizing the equal value of both. For example, FURF is centered on the figures of the owner and the pet. Not only is the pet given agency and power despite their submissive position, they are also respected and loved when they reject that agency. This mirrors the nature of the fandom at large, in which the line between artist and audience is blurred. Furries at all levels of notoriety are known for the variety and prolificacy of their creative output, even when compared to other fandoms, but a great deal of respect is shown for those who make little or no art themselves. In fact, major patrons of furry art often achieve a high status in their own right. Though it originated because of anthro characters in non-furry media, the modern fandom is, to a large extent, a fandom of itself. A further challenge to the dichotomy of celebrity and fan, of fan work and original. For another example, look at the queer dissolution of traditional gender roles, the active male and the passive female. Beyond these specific hierarchies, FURF also challenges the boundaries between fiction and reality, the self and the fursona, the cute object and the adoring subject. The scene presented in track 6 is fucking funny and fucking hot. Comedy and erotica, sincerity and irony, one and the same. Furry, which is on the most basic level about blending humanity and animalism, naturally challenges all kinds of false dichotomies. Where those dichotomies enforce a power dynamic, furry can draw that into question too. FURF is a paragon of furry music. Aside from anthropomorphic animals, it embodies many facets of the multimedia furry genre. It is a playful fan work, aware and respectful of the cultures in which it exists. It is both cute and erotic and holds within itself the associated power dynamics. It is queer, doing away with sex and gender in favor of a new furry model of identity. It weaponizes cringe to protect and empower its community. It commands respect for puppy, furry, and furfag as a functional social identity, more than escapism, and challenges all kinds of false hierarchies and dichotomies. I really love this album. It's motivated me to do a lot of cool stuff. I got more involved with my community, I traveled across the country for a live show, and then I wrote my own little EP. I, made this video. I hope that love comes across. That's all I have to say for now. I love talking about this stuff, so if you agree or horribly disagree, tell me in the comments. I don't claim to know what Pup was actually thinking, apart from what they've said in interviews, but I wanted to share my own reading of this art that I really enjoyed. Pup said they wrote a manifesto for the album, and wow, I would love to read that. It would be so cool to see how they view it differently. Although I guess that would be kind of a spoiler. If you enjoyed this video, go buy FURF on Bandcamp. You should buy the CD, the bonus tracks are very good and I need more people to hear them. If you like FURF a lot, you might like my songs a little bit. Look, I did a Pent Up Pup cover. You can listen on YouTube or SoundCloud or Bandcamp, I don't mind. I'm also on Twitter, @YetsBailey on everything. Now that's done, I'm gonna go make more music. Bye!